Have you ever paused long enough to truly listen to that constant voice echoing inside your mind? The inner chatter that seems to narrate your every move, dictate your choices, and, all too often, cast judgment over your actions like an invisible critic. At first glance, it feels like you, doesn't it? Like your identity wrapped in thought. But Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, urged us to look deeper, beyond the surface noise, into the quiet mystery of the soul. He explored, with striking insight, the complex relationship between that inner voice and our authentic self. What we assume to be ourselves is often merely a carefully constructed illusion, a mask created by the psyche to survive in a world that rarely welcomes our full truth. Jung believed the human mind is not a single voice, but a layered universe of consciousness, at the core of which resides the true self, a deeper identity that exists far beyond the ego, beyond the persona we wear for others. The voice we so often cling to as the voice of me is, in many cases, simply a construct of the ego, an adaptive mechanism that Jung described as necessary for survival, yet profoundly limiting for self-realization. So if that mental narration isn't really you, then who are you? According to Jung, the ego serves as a bridge, an interface between our conscious mind and the outer world. But what begins as a bridge often hardens into a wall, cutting us off from our own inner life. This internal voice becomes infused with fear, shame, and inherited judgments. It reflects not who we truly are, but the fragmented whispers of who we were taught to be. It carries the weight of our past traumas, parental conditioning, cultural scripts, and societal demands. And though it speaks in our own tone, its message rarely arises from the soul, it comes from our shadow. Jung introduced this concept to name the hidden, rejected aspects of ourselves, our disowned feelings, forgotten desires, and wounded truths. Often, the voice within is a projection of this very shadow, a mixture of beliefs we were too afraid to challenge and emotions we were never taught to welcome. Imagine, for instance, your inner dialogue repeating, "You're not enough." Where did this seed take root? Is it the residue of a childhood wound, a reflection of society's impossible standards, a lingering echo of a voice that once belonged to someone else but now disguises itself as your own? Jung invites us to rise above the internal noise, not to silence it, but to understand it, to observe it as a part of us, not the whole. True healing and emotional liberation begin when we dare to question the source of this voice, to see that it is often more of a program than a truth. It is only in this sacred act of inner observation that the real self begins to emerge from the depths. Beneath the noise lies clarity. Beneath the fear lies freedom. When we separate ourselves from the illusion that this voice defines us, we begin the profound journey of individuation, the path of becoming whole. And it is on this path that we rediscover not only who we are, but who we were always meant to be. Not a prisoner of old patterns, but a conscious being connected to something greater than the ego, the collective unconscious, the wisdom of the soul, the truth that was never lost, only buried. Jung believed that the true purpose of life is not merely to collect achievements or run from suffering, but to embark on a sacred journey, the journey of individuation. This path calls us to weave together all the fragmented pieces of our psyche, even those we've ignored, denied, or feared, in order to become whole. Our mental chatter, though often irritating or harsh, is not just background noise. It is a compass, pointing toward the very places within us that still ache, that still wait to be seen, soothed, and integrated. For instance, if your inner voice constantly revisits your past mistakes, Jung would urge you to explore the root of that guilt. What unspoken lesson lies beneath? What truth still longs to be acknowledged? Instead of suppressing the experience, how can you make peace with it and allow it to shape you from within? Approached this way, your inner monologue becomes more than just a loop of criticism. It becomes a portal into deeper self-understanding. It reveals the fragmented nature of our inner world. Each negative thought, each harsh judgment you catch yourself thinking is not an enemy but an invitation, an opening to question the origins of your pain. Often, these thoughts are rooted in the tender soil of childhood, early wounds, unmet emotional needs, or the conditioning of authority figures who demanded that you suppress your authenticity to be accepted. And what happens when we stop identifying with that voice? Jung taught that a great portion of human suffering springs from precisely this, mistaking the voice of the ego for the voice of the self. That voice inside, the one that whispers or shouts, "You're not good enough," isn't your essence, it's a defense. A mental construct formed not to hurt you, but to protect you from the pain of vulnerability, rejection, or failure. Yet, ironically, it is that very voice that keeps you imprisoned in the wounds it's trying to avoid. Imagine a simple, relatable moment. You make a mistake at work. Instantly, your mind lashes out. You're a failure. You'll never be enough. From Jung's perspective, this isn't your authentic self speaking. It's your wounded ego attempting to shield you, even as it deepens the wound. But something profound begins to shift when you choose not to react but to observe. In that moment of stillness, you begin to see the voice for what it is, a remnant, a reflex, not a reflection of your truth. This act of witnessing is powerful, but it demands courage. It demands that we turn inward and face what we've long avoided. Jung spoke of this as the descent into the underworld, a metaphor for the confrontation with the shadow, that hidden realm within where we bury the parts of ourselves we're too afraid to claim. But in that darkness lies immense light. Within the shadow dwell not just our pain, but our passion, our creativity, our forgotten dreams. What we repress becomes the source of our suffering, but also the seed of our transformation. Consider the person who silences their creativity out of fear of being judged. Their inner voice may constantly whisper, "You're not talented." But this voice is not the truth. It is the shadow speaking through fear, asking for healing. And when that individual dares to meet the fear head-on, dares to create anyway, they do more than overcome insecurity. They reclaim a sacred part of themselves. The shadow, Jung insisted, is not evil. It is simply the unknown, the rejected, the lost, the unloved within us. When we allow ourselves to face the voice of doubt and trace it back to its origin, we begin to see that what we fear most is often what we need to integrate most. And in doing so, we do not just silence the mental chatter, we rise above it. We remember that we are not the voice, we are the one who hears it, the witness, the soul, the self, emerging. The ego, in its relentless need to control and define, often spins an illusion of separation. It whispers that we are isolated, cut off from others, from nature, and perhaps most painfully, from our own soul. Yet Jung taught that at the deepest layer of our being, this is simply not true. Beneath the surface of our individual identity lies a vast and ancient wellspring he called the collective unconscious, a shared realm of symbols, archetypes, and universal human experiences that bind us together. When we quiet the ceaseless mental noise and descend into this deeper current of awareness, we begin to access a wisdom that transcends our personal history. Imagine this: the voice inside you that says, "You're not capable," may not be yours at all. It may be an echo, an inherited fear passed down through generations. But when you meet that voice, from a place of inner clarity, of self-awarenessness, you can transform that fear into creative energy, into purpose. It becomes not a barrier, but a bridge to authenticity. Still, as we journey toward deeper self-acknowledge, we must remember, the mental chatter doesn't vanish overnight, and it doesn't need to. Jung never saw the ego as something to destroy, but rather something to integrate. The ego, after all, serves a purpose. It allows us to navigate the physical world, but it must not govern us. Its authority must be balanced by the self, the deeper essence of who we truly are. Individuation, Jung's term for the process of becoming whole, requires this delicate alchemy. It asks us to acknowledge and accept the disowned parts of ourselves, without judgment or shame. Take, for instance, the insecurity that often fuels our inner dialogue. At first glance, it may seem like a flaw. But look closer. That insecurity might be nudging you to prepare more thoughtfully, to move with care, or to reflect before taking action. In this light, it becomes a teacher, not a tyrant. Rather than silencing these emotions, Jung invites us to understand them, to let them take their rightful place within our inner world. One of the simplest and most profound ways to loosen the grip of our mental chatter is through conscious reflection, a practice Jung considered essential. It starts with something as subtle as noticing a recurring thought, like, "I'm not enough," and asking, "Where did this come from? Is this truly mine? Or is it something I absorbed from my childhood, my culture, or a moment I never fully processed?" This moment of inquiry is a moment of liberation. It opens a space between you and the thought itself, a space wide enough for awareness, choice, and compassion. Picture a raging river. If you're inside it, struggling against the current, everything feels chaotic and consuming. But if you step out onto the bank and watch from the shore, you see it differently. The river is still flowing, but now you're observing it, not drowning in it. This is the power of conscious reflection. It allows you to witness the flow of your thoughts without identifying with them, to remember that they are part of your experience, but not the sum of who you are. In this unfolding, the unconscious plays a profound role. Jung described it as a vast living ocean, a reservoir of images, instincts, and emotions that subtly shape our lives, often without our conscious awareness. That inner dialogue you hear, much of it is the unconscious attempting to speak, to break through. Dreams, in particular, are one of its most honest languages. Jung believed that by paying attention to our dreams, we could begin to decode the messages hidden within our mental chatter. Say, for example, you dream of being trapped in a windowless room. This archetypal image might mirror your waking feeling of being confined by limiting thoughts or patterns. Jung would urge you not to dismiss such a dream, but to see it as a map, a symbol revealing where freedom is being called forth in your psyche. When we bring that insight into consciousness, something begins to shift. We loosen the chains. We reclaim agency, and in doing so, we don't just quiet the ego, we open ourselves to something larger. We begin to align not just with our personal truth, but with the timeless rhythm of the collective soul that connects us all. Jung believed that once we transcend the narrow confines of our mental chatter, we begin to sense a deeper unity with something greater than ourselves. It is in this silence beyond the noise that we touch the sacred, a connection to meaning and purpose that the ego, no matter how inflated, can never fabricate. This profound alignment with the deeper layers of the psyche and the collective unconscious shifts everything. We no longer see ourselves as fragmented individuals battling life alone. Instead, we awaken to the truth of our interconnectedness with others, with nature, with the very rhythm of existence. And this realization doesn't merely alter our inner world, it transforms the way we love, speak, relate, and walk through the world. Mental chatter, when left unexamined, reinforces the illusion of separation. It feeds us the lie that we are alone in our suffering, that no one else could possibly understand the battles we wage internally. It keeps us confined in a narrative of isolation. But Jung taught that by tapping into the collective unconscious, we uncover something radical, that our fears, our longings, our insecurities are not ours alone. They are threads in the vast tapestry of the human experience. This awareness dissolves judgment and gives birth to compassion, not only for others, but for the parts of ourselves we've abandoned. We begin to understand that what we thought made us different is what binds us to one another. Take relationships, for example. Often, our mental script says things like, "I'm not enough for this person," or "they just don't understand me." According to Jung, these aren't truths, they're projections. The ego, terrified of rejection, crafts these stories as armor, but in doing so, it erects invisible walls between us and those we love. If we can see these thoughts for what they are, echoes of unhealed wounds, we gain the power to choose a different response. Imagine being in a conflict with someone close to you. Your inner voice might urge you to defend yourself, justify your actions, or even strike back to preserve your pride. But if you pause and look within, you might see that the real trigger isn't the present moment. It's an old scar, a buried insecurity, whispering through the ego's script. And that shift in perception changes everything. Instead of reacting to pain, you respond from presence. Instead of perpetuating disconnection, you make space for empathy. Jung taught that this kind of inner work, recognizing projections, facing the unconscious, choosing authenticity over defense, is the doorway to healing not just the self, but our relationships. It is how we replace egoic reaction with soulful understanding. It is how we stop talking over life and finally begin to listen. Jung also spoke of the mysterious force he called synchronicity, those seemingly random events that, against all logic, arrive with uncanny timing and carry a message we can feel in our bones. These meaningful coincidences are not mere chance. They are the language of the collective unconscious, quietly weaving signs into our daily lives to nudge us toward our deeper purpose. Perhaps you've faced a moment of confusion, teetering between paths, and suddenly someone mentions a book, a dream, or a personal story that echoes exactly what your soul needed to hear. Jung would say that this is not an accident, it is alignment. It is the psyche whispering through the veil of reality, guiding you back to yourself. When we begin to trust these synchronicities, something extraordinary unfolds. We loosen the ego's tight grip, the constant need to control every outcome, and instead open to the sacred rhythm of life. This does not mean we surrender discernment or abandon rational thinking. It means we invite a new partner into the conversation, our intuition, that silent compass connected to something far older than our intellect. This is the delicate dance between conscious will and unconscious wisdom, between structure and surrender. And according to Jung, this balance is one of the most powerful keys to the process of individuation, the unfolding of the authentic self. Yet this journey is not gentle. To walk this path is to enter sacred territory, where courage is not optional. Jung warned that the road to integration, the dismantling of the ego, the embrace of the shadow, and the opening to the collective unconscious, is not for the faint of heart. It demands vigilance. It calls us to look again and again into the mirror of our beliefs, our fears, our patterns, and to be willing to change, to shed old skin, to begin again. But the rewards of this inner pilgrimage are immeasurable. You gain not just clarity, but peace, not just love, but truth. Relationships deepen because they are no longer built on masks, but on presence. Your life begins to feel less like a performance and more like a calling, and through this sacred unfolding, you come to realize the universe is not random, it is responsive, and when you truly begin to listen, beyond the mental noise, you'll hear it speaking back. A powerful and accessible way to deepen this inner work is through the practice of introspective journaling. Set aside just a few minutes each day to write freely about the thoughts and emotions that have surfaced. Don't filter, don't try to sound poetic or polished. Simply let your truth spill onto the page. This simple act of honest self-prospection creates a sacred space between you and your inner dialogue. It allows you to step outside the noise of your mental chatter and observe it, like watching clouds drift across the sky, instead of being swept away by it. Over time, you begin to recognize recurring beliefs, emotional patterns, and stories that have quietly shaped your behavior. Let's say, for instance, you notice a familiar theme appearing in your writing, the nagging sense that you're not enough. Jung would invite you not to dismiss this as self-pity, but to ask, where did this voice begin? Was it planted in childhood by a parent's silence? Was it born in comparison, in rejection, or in praise that came only when you performed? These questions are not meant to shame, but to free, because when you trace the origin of your pain, you begin to reclaim the power it once stole from you. And this is where Jung's wisdom becomes profoundly practical. His teachings aren't confined to theory or the abstract. They are invitations to transformation. When we apply his insights in daily life, we discover that they don't just change how we think, they change how we choose. They shape how we speak, how we love, and how we respond when life challenges us. By reconnecting with the authentic self, the deeper essence beyond the mask of the ego, we begin to live with clarity and congruence. Our relationships shift, our work becomes more meaningful, even our hardships begin to feel like purposeful chapters, not punishments. Jung described the collective unconscious as a vast reservoir of wisdom that we all share, a wellspring of archetypes, symbols, and ancient energies. These archetypes are not mere myths or ideas, they are living forces within us. When we become conscious of them, we awaken dormant parts of the psyche. Take the archetype of the hero, for example. It stirs within us the courage to face adversity, to rise when we feel broken. The archetype of the sage, on the other hand, awakens our inner knowing, the quiet voice that leads us back to wisdom when the world feels chaotic. So, how do we access this deeper layer of meaning? One of the most powerful portals is the dream world. Jung believed that dreams are the language of the unconscious, the soul speaking in symbols. If you dream of walking through a dark forest, for example, this may not be a fear to flee from, but a metaphor for your own untraveled inner terrain. The forest becomes a mirror, asking, what part of yourself have you avoided? What truth waits in the shadows? Reflecting on these symbols does more than entertain the imagination. It invites us into direct dialogue with the unseen parts of the soul, and through that dialogue, something sacred happens. We no longer live only on the surface. We begin to move with greater purpose. We begin to remember who we were, before the world told us who to be. One of the most vital aspects of Jung's work lies in the radical power of self-acceptance. So often, our inner dialogue whispers or screams that we are not enough, that we should be someone else, someone more polished, more pleasing, more worthy of love. The mental chatter becomes a tyrant, echoing expectations that were never truly ours. Yet Jung taught that authentic psychological growth begins not when we fix ourselves, but when we embrace all that we are, including the parts we've been taught to fear or reject. This isn't about resignation, it's about integration. It's about ending the civil war within. When we stop fighting our shadows, those hidden emotions, old wounds, unspoken longings, we release the energy they hold. They no longer sabotage us from the dark, they become allies in the light. Take, for example, emotions like anger or fear. Most of us were conditioned to bury these feelings, to label them as wrong or weak. But Jung asked a deeper question. What if these emotions are not enemies, but messengers? What if they are signals from the soul, asking us to listen? When anger rises, it might be pointing toward a boundary crossed or a truth silenced. When fear grips us, it might be guarding a vulnerable part of the self that longs to be seen. By approaching these inner storms with curiosity instead of judgment, we begin to transform them. We turn pain into insight. We turn reactivity into understanding. And most importantly, we turn shame into self-compassion. This shift does not stay confined to our inner world. It reshapes how we relate to others. When we operate from ego, our relationships often become battlegrounds. We defend, we accuse, we perform. We seek validation, fearing rejection, but when we begin to anchor ourselves in the authentic self, something remarkable happens. Our defenses soften. We feel safe enough to be vulnerable, to be honest, to be seen not as perfect, but as whole. This deepens intimacy and attracts people who resonate with who we truly are, not with the mask we wear. Consider a simple moment. You're in a disagreement with a partner or close friend. Your mind immediately floods with narratives. They don't understand me. I'm always the one who's wrong. Why do I even try? These thoughts aren't true. They are projections. echoes of old wounds. But if you pause, not to react, but to reflect, you might notice something else beneath the noise, a hurt part of you asking for connection. Jung would say, this is the moment of alchemy. When you catch yourself in the mental story and ask, is this really about them, or is this about me? You begin to dismantle the illusion. You begin to speak not from pride, but from presence, not from fear, but from truth. And in doing so, you create space for understanding where there once was only conflict. This is the quiet revolution Jung envisioned, not a life without pain, but a life lived in relationship with it. A life where the mind no longer dictates our worth, but serves the soul. A life where mental chatter becomes a doorway, not a prison. And all of it begins with the courage to accept what we once denied, because what we accept, we can finally heal. Ultimately, Jung reminds us that this path of inner transformation is neither straight nor swift. It winds, it stumbles, it circles back. There will be moments of breakthrough, followed by moments where old patterns re-emerge, and this is not failure. It is simply the rhythm of growth. What matters is not perfection, but devotion to the unfolding process. Every step, no matter how small, brings us closer to the essence we've long buried beneath noise, conditioning, and fear. A practical way to stay anchored in this commitment is through daily visualization. Each morning, take a few quiet minutes to imagine how you want to feel and be, not what you want to achieve or control. Picture yourself moving through the day with inner peace, authenticity, and grounded confidence. This simple practice recalibrates your energy and aligns your choices with your truest self. It's not about controlling outcomes, it's about living from the inside out. In doing so, you strengthen the invisible bridge between your conscious mind and the collective unconscious, allowing ancient wisdom to whisper through your daily life. At the core of Jung's approach lies the integration of the shadow and the invocation of archetypes, timeless forces that shape our behavior from the depths. When we befriend the shadow, we stop suppressing the very emotions that hold the key to our freedom. Anger, fear, sadness. These are not flaws to be exiled. If denied, they don't vanish, they only mutate. They surface as anxiety, conflict, burnout, or self-sabotage. But when we turn toward them with presence and compassion, we discover something sacred. Each negative emotion carries a message. Each one is a signal flare from the unconscious, asking to be seen, honored, and integrated. Imagine someone who has spent years silencing fear. That fear doesn't disappear, it hardens into chronic anxiety or paralyzing hesitation in the face of change. But if that person chooses to sit with their fear, not to judge or conquer it, but to listen, they might uncover an unmet need, a boundary ignored, or a part of themselves that longs to be protected. In that moment, fear transforms. It becomes a compass, not a cage. Archetypes, on the other hand, are the guiding patterns that live inside all of us. The hero, the sage, the lover, the sovereign. They offer us mirrors and maps. When we face adversity, we can call on the hero's courage. When we need wisdom, we can embody the sage's stillness. This is not fantasy, it is psychological alignment. For example, if you're navigating conflict at work, your ego might want to defend, prove, or withdraw. But if you consciously step into the energy of the sovereign, an archetype of balanced leadership, you can respond with clarity, integrity, and poise. You become not just reactive, but intentional, and that changes everything. This shift is not just internal. When you begin to live from this deeper place, your entire world reshapes around it. You make better decisions, you form deeper relationships, you walk into your life with a quiet power that cannot be shaken by noise. And in doing so, you no longer just survive the mental chatter. You rise above it, guided not by fear, but by the voice of your soul. The daily practice of integrating your shadows and engaging with archetypes does more than shift your internal landscape. It begins to heal your relationship with the collective unconscious itself. You start noticing patterns, synchronicities, and meaningful coincidences that once slipped by unnoticed. These aren't random events. They're subtle reminders from the deeper layers of reality that you are never truly alone. You are woven into something far greater than your individual story. For example, you might find that just when you're facing a crossroads, a conversation arrives like medicine, or a book finds you at precisely the right moment. To Jung, such synchronicities were not accidents, but sacred signs, evidence that you are aligning with your true path and opening to the universal forces guiding your journey. To cultivate this alignment, Jung encouraged simple yet profound practices: meditation, introspective journaling, and mindful observation of your emotions and thoughts. One powerful technique is to sit in stillness. Close your eyes and simply watch your inner chatter as it unfolds, without judgment, without resistance. Let your thoughts drift like clouds across the vast sky of your awareness. In doing so, you begin to see clearly. You are not your mental noise. You are the witness behind it. This awareness is not just calming, it is liberating. It strengthens the muscle of authenticity and helps you return, again and again, to your true self. Consistency is essential. With every small act of reflection, every intentional breath, you deepen your integration, and as the days pass, something shifts. The grip of the mental chatter loosens. The voice of your ego grows quieter. You start to sense a deeper peace and clarity emerging from within. This inner transformation radiates outward, influencing not just your choices, but the energy you bring to every interaction. When you live from your authentic self, your presence alone begins to inspire and uplift others. The light you carry becomes a silent invitation for others to do their own inner work. Integrating the shadow and working with archetypes not only transforms how you perceive yourself, it redefines how you move through the world. When you live from the core of who you are, you no longer react impulsively from fear or insecurity. You respond with depth, clarity, and intention. In your relationships, this shows up as greater empathy, emotional patience, and true connection. The ego often pushes us to see others as threats, rivals, or mirrors for our unhealed wounds. But when you're rooted in your essence, you recognize the shared humanity in everyone you meet. You begin to see that others are also navigating their own shadows. This softens your judgments and expands your compassion. Take, for instance, a moment when someone close to you criticizes or misjudges you. Instinctively, your mental chatter might fire back, "How dare they?" or "They don't understand me at all." But if you pause, if you truly look beneath the reaction, you may see that their behavior stems from their own unresolved pain, their projections, their fears. That shift in perception can de-escalate a conflict and turn a wall into a doorway. It invites connection where the ego would have chosen distance. Jung also emphasized that shadow work and archetypal awareness shape how we make important life decisions. When you're trapped in mental overthinking, choices often arise from fear, anxiety, or the need to please others. But when you're aligned with your inner truth, your decisions are made from a place of soulful clarity. Imagine you're considering a major life change, a new job, a move, or a relationship decision. The mental chatter might flood you with fear. What if I fail? What will people think? Am I even ready? But these thoughts are not you. They are the ego's attempt to keep you confined within the known. By observing them rather than identifying with them, you reclaim your power to choose from purpose rather than fear. A helpful technique here is to visualize the desired outcome through the eyes of your authentic self. Close your eyes. Imagine you've already made the choice and everything is flowing smoothly. Focus on the feeling, not the external outcome, but the inner sense of peace, alignment, and joy. This internal resonance guides you toward the right path and opens the door for synchronicities to assist you. The more this becomes part of your daily rhythm, the more your mental noise fades into the background. It won't disappear completely, but its power over you will dissolve. Each time you choose to observe your thoughts rather than react, you are building a bridge back to your essence. Over time, this inner orientation redefines your identity and your world. The transformation becomes deeply personal and deeply collective. Jung believed that as we move closer to individuation, we contribute to the elevation of collective consciousness. Living from your essence is not an isolated act, it's a ripple effect. When you embody your truth, others feel it. They begin to awaken, not because you preached, but because you lived. There is no finish line to this work. Individuation is not a destination. It is a lifelong dance between the ego, the unconscious, and the self. Every emotion, every setback, every insight is part of this sacred unfolding. Some days, you'll feel aligned and deeply connected to your truth. Other days, the mental noise will roar again. That's okay. Each small act of awareness is a step forward. Every choice to reflect instead of react is a quiet revolution. And as this way of being becomes natural to you, you will notice something profound. Your very presence begins to change the energy around you. By living from your essence, you don't just transform your own life, you empower others to do the same. This is the greatest gift you can give to the world. Carl Jung once said, "As far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being." When you commit to your own awakening, you become that light, for yourself and for the world around you. Let this be your legacy, not a perfect life, but a conscious one. If something within this message stirred you, if even a single word mirrored your inner experience, I invite you to let your voice be heard in the comments. Have you encountered that soul whose presence feels like home, or are you still walking the sacred path back to yourself? Your story, however unfinished, may become the lantern in someone else's darkness, the very sign they didn't know they were searching for. And if someone close to you is silently struggling with the illusion that love must hurt, that self-abandonment is the price of connection, or that they are unworthy of peace, share this video with them. Help me reach the ones who need to remember. Real love does not demand that we shrink. True connection does not ask for sacrifice of the soul. And the most vital union we will ever form is the one with our own inner truth. Before you go, I invite you to subscribe and activate the notification bell. Here, in this space, we journey beneath the surface of things, exploring the hidden architecture of the psyche, the whispers of the unconscious, and how every relationship is but a mirror reflecting our personal evolution. If there's a theme, a question, or a wound you would like us to explore in future videos, leave it below. This space breathes because of you. Your voice is not only welcome here, it is essential. Thank you for showing up, not just to this video, but to your inner work, to the sacred labor of remembering who you truly are. And always remember this, when the right person appears, your soul will know, not through fear, but through peace. But until that moment, let your most intimate relationship be the one you cultivate within. That is the foundation, that is the home. And from that wholeness, all things real are born. Until next time, I'll see you on the path.